Hi, my name is Cameron. Hi, my name is Hi.
Hi, my name is Ethan. I was part of the Spring Leadership Academy, and my project was surrounding misdiagnosis and over.
We all good to start, y'all?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, all right. I'm really excited to be here today as we celebrate the research accomplishments of an amazing cohort. But before we get into that, um, I wanted to just give a description of what Leadership Academy is for those viewers who may never heard of Leadership Academy or aren't very familiar with what the program is. And so CYC's Regional Leadership Academy is a 12-week leadership development program for youth who are in out of home care through the foster care system or the juvenile justice system. And throughout this 12-week, they received trainings on how to develop research, specifically on the topic of war on drugs. And then they went through a 4-week implementation of their research plan. So I'm really excited to talk about a little bit of the works that have been going on. But before we do that, um, some of the goals that we had in our leadership academy was to build our membership base by engaging current and former foster youth who have an interest in advocacy work. As you may know, CYC is all about doing that advocacy work, trying to better the system, as well as the environment around us. So with that, we were able to provide them with political education around the topic, some skill building through our dream mapping workshops and other workshops with other professionals who were able to stop by, and also the opportunity to develop critical understandings and build their social capital through each other, as well as grow their network, um, and prepare to engage with policymakers and work groups in other policy initiatives and things such as like the summer intensive program, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end. But ultimately, this was an opportunity for them to connect with their CYC chapters and other groups of youth leading campaigns for institutional systems of change. and other people who may have information, resources, and opportunities to help them further develop their research. So a little bit about the program. And here is our leadership cohort. This was pretty much the makeup that we were um, that our cohort consisted of. We had some Southern leaders, we had Bay Area leaders from South Bay, and we had some Northern leaders, and we'll talk a little bit more about their projects. But before we do that, a formal introduction. My name is Kwaje Johnson. You may know me from the last Leadership Academy watch party. I was actually granted the opportunity to be having my own region and my own regional leaders this time around. So I was really excited about that. I'm the South Bay Community Advocacy Coordinator, and my leader his name was Aramis Anderson, and his topic was relevant to the war on drugs with a specific emphasis in the disparities and economics in the marijuana industry, with our coach being Liang Chow. And I just want to give a special shout out to all of those who showed interest and were a part of this process, helping me and Aramis. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Jessica.
Perfect. Thank you, Kwaje. My name is Jessica. I'm the Community Advocacy Coordinator for the Northern Region. My pronouns are she and her. This year for the Northern Region, we had Ethan, Sasha, Anika, and Rose, as well as Andrew. Some of the topics for our region consisted of over-medication in foster youth and its correlation to drug addiction, relationship between drugs and the domino effect with drugs within a family cycle, and then mental health and its direct correlation to mass incarceration. And then just a quick shout out to our coaches, Vance, Vanessa, and Katrina over there in Humble as well. And then I'll pass it over to you, Kenny.
Kenny here from the Southern Region, CAC. Some of our participants was Caitlin, Naomi, Christopher, and Felipe. Some of their focuses were mental health and well-being and lifestyles. Also, along the mental health track, they were focusing on ADHD and its effects on foster youth within the foster care system. And also another project that they didn't get to, but just the prison pipeline and school to prison pipelines. Christopher was really interested in working on that and didn't have a chance to complete that process. So with that being said, I'm going to, Caitlin was able to present something, and so we're gonna share her video real quick.
As we get this video started, I did want to give a special shout out to one of our coaches, Heather. Thank you for participating and helping out. I'm pretty sure more than one region, if not all. Thank you for your statistical analysis help and just overall input and feedback when it came to presentation. Was greatly appreciated on my end, and I'm pretty sure others who received your help felt the same.
Okay, so was it not showing? Did you guys not see it?
No, I didn't see it. I'm not sure if it showed for anyone else.
I did not see it either.
All right.
I think as you're playing it, screen share, press screen share after you have it set up and make sure that it's on the window with the video because it may have been stuck on the window you decided to screen share on. Thank you all for bearing with our technical difficulties. You don't want to miss this for sure. We have some great projects and great research outlines developed and recorded by our cohort participants.
Okay. All right, we got it now. Yes. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We are about to show this right now.
Right.
Hey, Kenny, I don't think we have audio.
And that was Caitlin. She was not able to join us. But what do you call it? Her topic was on ADHD and her survey that she still plans on distributing. There was no audio? Oh, man. Let me see. Okay, let's try this one more time. One more time. Optimize. All right, let's try it one more time. One more time. Two, 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 two. Sound audio. All right, here we go. This is it. Third time's a charm.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. I'm from Southern California, and the I really liked how it presented, like how the Youth Leadership Academy really like it was all about the thing. And what type did you choose to focus on? I chose to focus on ADHD, and I chose to focus on ADHD because it helps me because I have ADHD, and when I was in foster care, nobody helped me with my ADHD. I was on medicine after medicine after medicine after medicine. So yeah.
All right. So that was Caitlin. Sorry for technical difficulties, but yes. She is working on her project. Her project is ready to go. And she plans on to continuing to advocate for ADHD in her region within Riverside County. And so with that being said, I'm going to set up the video and pass it to Jessica so she can introduce Ethan's video.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So Ethan's topic was over medication of foster youth and its correlation to drug addiction. And so Ethan was able to play a nice little video clip for us and kind of explain his experience in the Leadership Academy as well as the project that he worked on. And so Kenny, if you can play that video for me, please.
Okay, give me 1 second. Everything's opening in a different file here.
Hi, my name is Ethan. I was part of the Spring Leadership Academy, and my project was surrounding misdiagnosis and over-medication and how it comes into play with the war on drugs. It was a very interesting topic for me, but there was not a lot of information surrounding this topic, which was also very concerning for me. It took a lot of digging and a lot of research for me to find stuff surrounding this topic, but I did it, and I found, some good articles, some good data, and but a key question that was in my focus group was, if you did receive mental health services, what treatment were you offered? Were you offered medication, alternative treatment methods? Were you taught coping mechanisms, stuff like that? And I'd say overall, my experience was awesome. I heard a lot of amazing presentations, met a lot of amazing people, made great connections, and it really helped boost my confidence in my advocacy, and as well as my confidence overall. I feel like now I can research and I can find data on almost anything. It's just all about putting the time and the effort into it. So I just overall had an amazing experience with the Spring Leadership Academy.
Thank you, Kenny. And then while you're getting Sasha and Anika's video ready, I can talk a little bit about Rose's project. So Rose was a participant from Humboldt County. Rose's research question was, does mental health have a direct correlation to mass incarceration and the war on drugs? So Rose was actually able to launch a survey that took place within California and was able to gather about 15 responses. Some of the information that she got from that was that 53.8% of individuals have struggled with incarceration and both drug addiction. 38.5% of people reported that their drug addiction was due to the lack of resources that they were able to maintain within the mental health system. And then some key factors that prevented individuals from bettering their mental health included lack of resources, childhood trauma, labels, and finances as well. And so this next video that we're going to go into is Sasha and Anika's presentation. The topic was, what is the relationship between foster youth who are affected by drugs and the domino effect with drugs within a family cycle? And so they put on a nice presentation for us here today. Thank you, Kenny.
Domino Effect on Drugs, made by Annika Bulawan and Sasha Bell.
So we did the table of contents in 4 categories. So for the first one, we talked about our project. Then we did the statistics, and then research, and then finally the conclusion.
About. We researched and collected data about the relationship between foster youth who are affected by drugs and the domino effect with drugs in families. Our research. We interviewed different people and collected different testimonies of people who are affected. This comes from Anonymous 1. A1 entered foster care at the age of 13 and had been exposed to drugs all their life. Their parents did drugs, and so in A1's eyes, it was never something completely bad. It started with cigarettes, and then it was weed. After being put in foster care, they were able to stop using cigarettes, but their consumption of weed has never stopped and is in fact growing. Part 2, Anonymous 2, A2 was exposed at the age of 5 and started using at age 11. They talked about being pressured to smoke by parental figures and continuing to use even after being put in care. They shared that they never tried to reach out to anyone with their problem, nor had anybody reach out to them, and still to this day suffer from effects of drugs. Addiction effects on children. An estimated 1 in 8 children live with a parent who had an active substance use disorder in the past year. Often, these foster youth feel like they don't have anyone else to turn to. They're suffering from unpredictable and unsafe environments. Their homes are often filled with accessory and role reversal. They receive inconsistent physical and emotional support, are much higher risk of being physically and emotionally abused, and suffer from social development such as self-confidence, health, and more.
Statistics, kids in foster care. Data. How many people are currently in foster care right now? There are approximately 424,000 foster youth nationwide. Despite child welfare's efforts to prevent the removal of children from their parents, the number of children in foster care has been increasing. Currently, we are at an all-time high as the demand for foster parents is far higher than the supply. And factors like parental opioid addiction are forcing more children to be removed from their homes. How many youth in California are currently in foster care? There are 59,716 foster youth in California as of 2021. Prevalence of parental alcohol or other drug use as contributing factor for reason for removal in the United States, 2000 to 2016. So as you can see in the graph, the percentage went up 16.8%. Conclusion. So me and my partner gathered information about preventions so that children will not lead to drug addiction. So the first one is to give support and get help. Foster youth have to have the will to try and get help. The next one is get a hobby. So getting hobbies or finding other passions can help youth distract and reroute themselves from drugs. The next one is be aware of friends. So foster youth need to be wary on who they surround themselves and let known that their friends could possibly make their situation worse. The next one is be aware of the consequences like health factors. And then the last but not least, safe and healthy environment. Here are resources, national helplines that you can call to talk to someone if you're feeling like depressed or have something wrong with your mental health. So yeah, and then for the end, we put our links together that we use to research.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Jessica, did you have any other participants before we move over to South Bay? South Bay participants, we have.
Take it over, Kwaje.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been waiting. To showcase this wonderful work that has been produced by Aramis Anderson. As Kenny gets that video up and running, I just want to give a short spiel on the project that Aramis conducted. His goal was to be able to inform local system impacted youth and people on the reality of the war on drugs, similar to how he was awakened to this reality during the Leadership Academy. He conducted focus group conversations to analyze understanding of support systems with an emphasis on expungement. He had recorded this webinar with focus groups unrecorded so that he can provide them a similar breakdown of what the war on drugs is, as well as provide questions for the group of system impacted people to discuss, like, do you know what expungement is? Or do you know how to navigate systems of support on this matter? And how has your access to opportunities been hindered by your record? So he was able to conduct some focus group with some of the professionals that we invited during this cohort, which was Khalil Ferguson and Pepe Santa Maria, Khalil does works on expungement, and Pepe does more so works on dream mapping. And so with that, Kenny, right here, what you're viewing is Aramis's webinar that he's been passing around to some of the system impacted people he felt wouldn't need this, given that these opportunities are pretty scarce for people coming out of the system or coming out of imprisonment. Systems of technology specifically are pretty hard to navigate. And so I hope you enjoyed this video on pretty much a summary of what we learned here or what we provided in context here during the Leadership Academy, with an emphasis on marijuana impact. Thank you, Kenny.
Presentation. Okay, hello everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm Aramis Anderson, representing the California Youth Connection here in the Bay Area. The following presentation will be discussing the current climate of the marijuana industry and its history in the United States. So I hope you guys enjoy. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much. For those who don't know, there is actually a long-standing history of marijuana use in the United States, however in a different form, hemp in medicine. Farmers were initially incentivized for nearly 200 to 300 years to utilize marijuana for a variety of domestic products and medicine, including public pharmacies for over-the-counter medicine. As you can see here in the presentation, it talks about the Virginia Assembly in 1619, and they passed legislators specifically for hemp. And essentially the different types of products that can be created are like hemp seed oil, hemp seed milk, thread and fabrics for disposable products or clothes as well. Now, if you notice, this is pretty much a timeline. We're going to be progressively looking at the time of U.S.'s progression around laws and their more so persona and perspective around marijuana and how it's legally utilized and how legislators been used within certain demographics and communities. So by 1906, legislators began to utilize regulations to establish uniformity and place restrictions on what could and what could not be placed within ingestible items and medications. By the 1930s, the U.S. is becoming in a time of self-awareness and self-identity. For those who don't know, it was like the golden age of Hollywood, and the U.S. is more so taking on a conservative approach as a nation, and with that came the criminalization of foreign entities. So by 1937, we have the Marijuana Act, and that's essentially a time in which the United States has deemed marijuana as evil and associated heavily with Mexican immigration, and an association with that of being lazy, and also very consistent on a comparison level of like a Birth of a Nation, if anybody's familiar with that term and how that affected the African American community. By 1937, President Nixon kicked off the war on drugs. However, it's not 1937, my apologies. By 1971, President Nixon kicked off the war on drugs. However, the Schaefer Commission in 1972 actually proposed that the personal use of marijuana be decriminalized compared to those who are using it for capital gain. So as you can see here, this is just a few little early depictions of what the early criminalization of marijuana looked like. As you can see here, heavy inside the title of an actual newspaper article saying "evil Mexican plants that drive you insane." So this is very vindictive of like the times in which what our nation was very like right-wing and conservative about. Now, here we have the by 1973. Actually, we currently come to an understanding of like what we need to do on an agency level and on an enforcement level within the United States. And we created the Drug Enforcement Agency, also known as the DA. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Narcos from Netflix, but it pretty much tells their whole story. In the 1970s, there's actually a great divide. Like between the country was essentially split, as you can see in this picture earlier. War on drugs is a war on us. We had great advocates on the use of drugs, psychedelics, marijuana, even cocaine, amphetamines, etc. However, We also had a great divide of individuals who stepped hand in hand with the DA and was more so in opposition of that. And by the 1980s, Ronald Reagan began his approach on the war on drugs and essentially utilized policy to cause great disparities within law and within various ethnic groups and communities as well. There's a split between how marijuana and cocaine was legally being associated on a criminal level. So individuals were getting different convictions and more so and facing different penalties and charges based on whether they use marijuana or cocaine, even though that there's a great disparity in how those drugs affect you on a psychological level and on a community level, on an interaction level between individuals. So we're going to fast forward. So this is like the impact. So by I don't know if anybody knows about Nancy Reagan, but like by 1980, like just say no was one of the major slogans. And it's the whole approach that if you're addicted to drugs, the only thing you need to do is just say no. And very much so it's been associated in a lot of communities that it's not as easy as when someone's dealing with addiction that they can just say no. And one of the things I would like to highlight is also within this, there's actually a news anchor, and he's pointing out some of like the propaganda that was being proposed during the times. It says, last warning to all dope peddlers and gangsters, black, white, Puerto Rican, get out of Harlem. And it's just very vindictive of the times, you know. And there's actually a baby here about maybe 3 to 4 years old, literally in diapers, while his whole family is being pretty much their house is being kicked in by the police officers during the drug time, during the crack era and the crack epidemic. So disparities between laws and mass incarceration. As you can see, this is just very specifically about the legislative and laws that were passed that pretty much determined the division between communities and how drugs were pretty much being processed within the legal procedure. So it says in 1985, they created a 5-year mandatory sentence for the possession of 5 grams of crack cocaine, and a mandatory minimum means what it says. A person convicted of a first offense of possessing 5 grams of crack had to be sentenced to 5 years in a federal prison. But however, in contrast, in 1986, the Act on Coke snorting users was caught with 100 times that amount of powder cocaine. So essentially it's like 100-to-1 ratio. And it's pretty much stating that an individual can get caught with 100 times as much cocaine as those caught in possession of crack cocaine, which is pretty much a derivative of the same substance. However, there's a 5-year sentence for association for both, and that was the minimum. So it's like that directly caused a disproportionate impact on the African American community because there was such a higher access to crack cocaine, which by 1996, which I'll talk about in the next slide, is pretty much entirely employed by the government. And it's pretty much sad to say that outside of the laws directly being targeted towards the African American community so that they would be facing higher penalties and mass incarceration, at the same time, we have individuals in the government that's actually feeding the community these drugs and narcotics, and and have the legislator on the back end persecuting them. So here's just a little statistics about mass incarceration as a whole. It says here that in the lifetime likelihood of an African American man getting in prison is one in every 3 African American men. However, for a white male, the correspondence is 1 in every 17. So it's just been very vindictive when African Americans make up nearly 7% of the U.S. population, but make up 40% of the prisons. And it's like, why is that? And this more so has to do with over-policing and more so an agenda to arrest that community specifically. As you can see here, this is a few demographics at the bottom of like the timeline of like the U.S. prison population, and currently it's literally over about 3 million. However, you can literally tell the spike in times between the 1970s and there being less than half a million individuals incarcerated. Then by 1980s, there's literally roughly 500,000 to 700,000 individuals that are incarcerated. Then by the 90s, it's over 1 million. Then by 2000, we're at 2 million. So it literally doubles within a decade. And by each decade, it pretty much the increments double. And you can very vindictive of like that's a mass incarcerating tactic to incarcerate certain individuals and peoples. Now we're going to move forward to the legislation aspect of California, and this is also where I'm talking about the 1996 aspect, where Gary Webb essentially released a newspaper article called "The Dark Alliance," and it's pretty much identified various evidence that he had in the connections between the CIA and the crackdown between the crack epidemic within the African American community in neighborhoods in South Los Angeles. So that was just very vindictive at the times, and it's crazy because at the same time in 1996, when Gary Webb released this, California itself passed Proposition 215, which allowed for marijuana to be used for individuals with serious and painful diseases such as AIDS, cancer, depression, and etc. So at that same time, where they're pretty much highlighting that there was CIA government activity within directly poisoning the community and giving them direct access to crack cocaine at a high rate. At the same time, we have marijuana being legalized, which was also highly persecuted and associated with immigrant and at the point in time how the nation had seen as second class citizens. And to the right hand, we have just a figure just talking about what the current status of what legalization looks like. Currently, we have 18 states plus Washington, D.C., which has been legalized. We have 31 states that have decriminalized marijuana or cannabis. 36 states plus D.C. that have comprehensive medical cannabis laws, and then 15 additional states recognizing the value of at least some medical cannabis preparations. And with that, the only thing that we're missing is that individuals that have been previously incarcerated have not been released. So even here, this is statistics of what from the 2000s to 2010 of individuals that use marijuana. And as you can see, from 18 to 25, there's actually a higher rate of individuals that are Caucasian or white that utilize marijuana. However, when it comes to arrest in that same time period, African Americans are literally arrested like 5 times at the rate. Well, so my apologies, 4 times as much as the rate. And as you can see, this is very indicative of a story and a history specifically associated with the African American community and being over policed and directly targeted for mass incarceration. So now we have here identifying the problem. So this is one of the major problems. We have 40,000 people currently incarcerated for cannabis-related charges. However, at the same time, where marijuana is being currently legalized and taxed and supposedly recreational in multiple states, there's a $45 billion revenue calculation for 2024. I think this is very vindictive right there and let you know that there's all these racial disparities in context of the overall community within marijuana legalization, and also within the individuals that are able to use it or utilize it since it has been legalized. And the major issue here is that not only are individuals in the Black community one of the hardest hit by the mass incarceration of our communities when it comes to the illegal aspect of marijuana prior to 1996, though we're disproportionately allowed the same access when it comes to the legal cannabis industry. So it's an aspect of like we have 80% of the population of individuals currently incarcerated for marijuana-related charges. However, only 5% are actively being able to participate in the legal aspect when it comes to dispensaries and pharmacies nationwide. And that's why we talk about this figure is $45 billion in revenue, not million, but $1 billion in revenue for 2024. And that's what's calculated. Moving forward, we're going to just talk about what it looks like in 2020 and 2021, and what it looks like for other companies to be vocal about this major issue. Ben & Jerry's is known for being a strong advocate of social justice and justice as a whole, and throughout various communities for LGBTQ rights, for African American rights, as well as marijuana rights associated with African Americans as well. So this is something that they did during 420, and on their Instagram account, they talked about being very direct and honest about the marijuana industry and currently how it looks. As it says, Black people are 264% more likely to be arrested than their white counterparts in reference to cannabis possession charges. However, in context, we're talking about a community that's where marijuana is actually legalized, but we're still being arrested for possession. At the same time, again, as we brought up earlier, about the whole aspect of African Americans only making up 5% of the legal owned operations of dispensaries and medical products or clinics that dispense marijuana for individuals that have cancer, depression, etc. So it says, ever notice how most people making money from legalized cannabis are white? Overall, there are about currently nearly 700,000 cannabis arrests in 2018. 90% of these possessions, 90% of these arrests were for possession. So you come to understand this about what cannabis has an effect on in our communities when it comes to like DUIs, etc. There's literally less arrests for DUIs compared to marijuana, but the effects of DUIs, these accidents, life risk, etc. It's very disproportionate. Moving forward, one thing that they were very advocate about when it came to Ben and Jerry's and their propaganda for 420 is that they wanted us to pass the Moores Act, and the Moores Act is essentially to end the criminalization of cannabis on a federal level, because right now it's only on a state level. So statewide, you can go state to state, but the federal government at any point in time can step in and arrest any individuals that have capitalized off marijuana or just utilize it as a whole. The Moores Act also wants to expunge existing cannabis arrests, and that would be very effective and necessary and needed for the African American community at large, because, as it says earlier, we're dealing with having to be most disproportionately arrested for these types of charges. However, having the least amount of access and gain to the community and with the community on a legal level and access to it on a dispensary level to be able to be owners. In addition to that, there's a 3-strike law within California that a lot of individuals that have maybe utilized or potentially even sold marijuana on a small level are currently in jail for life for even though on California since 1996, as we read since Proposition 215 earlier, marijuana has been legal on a medical level and now on a recreational level since 2016, if I'm mistaken. And the last aspect of the Moores Act is that to ensure that the federal government cannot discriminate against people based on cannabis use. So when it comes to applying for jobs, applying for grants, etc., government assistance, individuals that have been previously arrested, they cannot be told that they can't have access to it because they are previously incarcerated. Lastly, this is a few resources about what currently the industry looks like. So, or also if individuals that have been previously incarcerated for any marijuana-related charges, they can actually get education and have opportunities to be reassociated into the community and potentially be owners. There's a variety of schools as well, such as Oaksterdam, if I'm not mistaken. They have a couple of locations throughout the United States that teach about marijuana cultivation. So here we have the marijuana policy project, and that helps individuals that are recently incarcerated get jobs, etc. Within the marijuana industry, maybe be a bud tender if anyone knows what that means. And that's just an individual who works essentially as a cashier and handles customer interactions for the marijuana industry and dispensaries. One major and really good resource for this, and just for the community at large, is the American Civil Liberty Union, and they do a lot of work when it comes to the the advocacy for individuals that have been recently incarcerated, and as well as individuals that are looking for resources since being that, or want to look into recently like lobbying events or passing legislative to ensure that marijuana is legalized on a federal level eventually, or from state to state. There's also the Last Prisoner Project. They're a great resource, as essentially just individuals that have been incarcerated on a prison on a federal level for maybe 10 to 15 years or more. And it's essentially an opportunity for those individuals to get reacclimated to society and work and get paid their worth, essentially. The Freedom House Reentry Education and Employment Corporation, free in Woodland Hills, California, just on a local level, if anybody is looking for any direct resources, is a great organization to work with, or even look for resources with, or maybe even apply for if you're looking for employment opportunities. So I just want to say thank you for your time. I know it's been a long presentation, a lot of information. Feel free, if anybody needs my email to get any of these slides, I can send those right to you. I appreciate your time. Thank you for so much, and you have a great one.
Thank you all for sitting through that. I know it was a lot of information, but Aramis, his goal was to, knowing that a lot of inmates who he was speaking to didn't have a lot of access to the resources and the knowledge that we provided through Leadership Academy, he felt to, utilize this as an opportunity, not only to like digest the material himself, but to also share it to those who are directly impacted by it. And with that, he came out with a few goals. Some of his goals were the next steps would be to figure out ways to replicate systems like provided by Khalil, who has expungement services, because what was expressed by a lot of the people who participated in his focus groups were that they didn't really know how to pursue expungement services, and those who did, they felt that it was highly legal, involving lawyers. It also came with fee prices, which further hindered their accessibility to getting their criminal records expunged. And just to give y'all a little bit of context on Khalil Ferguson and what services Aramis is intending to hope to copy or use this as a backbone for something he would like to start in his area in the Bay, as well as down in LA. Khalil has a what we call the United Core Alliance, and it's an organization created by social equity advocates for the advancement of social equity in the cannabis industry. And the UCA assists individuals with historically underserved communities by assisting community members with things like job training, personal development, and equipping them with resources. And this organization engages populations and communities most harmed by the war on drugs to create pathways for job placement in emerging markets, facilitating educational opportunities to increase economic mobility, and organize legal support to formerly incarcerated individuals. And Khalil Ferguson is currently the president of UCA, and he centers his study and advocacy around the intersections of economic development, the criminal justice system, and their impact on low-income communities, which are also drug of war impacted communities. And here's a little bit about his expungement services. But after having a focus group with these professionals, we felt that there was a definite need to focus more so on coalition building than providing or pursuing policy, given that it is tightly embedded within the system, and it would be best to just help each other out with our local neighborhoods and doing the work to kind of uplift that for ourselves. And with dream mapping, what was the takeaway from our conversation with Pepe Santa Maria is that formerly incarcerated people deserve a space and time to shake off external influences and tune into what goals they would like to pursue, what dreams that they have, giving them an opportunity to dream, which is in itself a form of taking some generational wealth back from this system that has heavily impacted them. So thank you all for sitting through that. I know Aramis is working to develop a more in-person approach, given that people who are system impacted don't necessarily know how to navigate technical resources, nor should we assume that they know how to navigate technical resources. And I think what he is working on now is developing a survey to bring this at the forefront so that he can advocate for centers like Khalil Ferguson's to happen in cities near you or that are affected by the war on drugs as well. So thank you all for participating and watching that. That's all I have for my participants. And I think that's all that we have left, right? Is everyone still with me?
Yeah, that's it.
With that, I do want to shout out our coaches that stuck with us. Shout out Vance Garcia. Thank you, Liang Chow. Shout out to Vanessa Hernandez. I seen you out there. Shout out to Katarina. Shout out to Heather. Thank you so much. And to Kate, Miguel, Kenny, Jessica, the whole staff for supporting us through this process. And I think now most of the previous cohort from both fall and spring are moving and transitioning over to the summer intensive program to further develop an understanding of how all of this research overlaps and is correlated with each other. And I'm excited to see what they do with that work as well. Any closing remarks from my colleagues before we sign out?
No, just definitely a great job, all the participants. A lot of hard work was put in, lots of late nights, I know, doing research and working on projects. So definitely want to give props to you guys, and looking forward to seeing you guys on the next version, Leadership Academy 2.0.
Definitely, thank you. And just going off what you both just said, shout out to the participants as well as the coaches. I know at the end of this, I was like, whoa, we're wrapping up the Leadership Academy and its finals. So I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody for completing this and even engaging in the summer intensive. You're awesome. And we really appreciate all your hard work.
Yes, thank you. It was such a pleasure working with you all. And for those who would like to find out about more opportunities, please check out the link tree that should be posted down below after this is officially uploaded to YouTube, as well as our newsletter and our Instagram. We have plenty of opportunities for system impacted youth to participate in. We have member intake for those who are interested in becoming members, and follow us on Instagram to keep updated on all the amazing things that are going on in CYC. Thank you so much for your time. That's all I got for y'all. Peace out.